Let's talk about that secret digital life you've got going on, you know? That folder packed with videos you save, but never, ever share. It's way more than just a random collection of stuff. It's kind of like your unsent diary, and believe me, it says a lot more about you than you probably think.
You know the feeling, right? You're just scrolling and then bam, a video just hits you. It perfectly explains a feeling, a weird thought, a whole situation you're in. And your first instinct is to send it, probably to the exact person it's about. But then you hesitate. Your finger just hovers and you hit save instead. It just vanishes into this digital drawer. So why do we all do that?
Well, believe it or not, there's actually a name for this. Some researchers are calling it the saved feelings reel. It's this private, personal archive we're all building, stuffed with content that has this really high emotional charge. And it's become this super common digital habit, basically turning our saved folders into these little vaults of unexpressed feelings. So yeah, the big question is why? What is going on in our brains in that split second of hesitation? Let's dive into the psychology of why we choose the private save over the public send. It all goes down in what you could call the 1 second stop. It's this lightning-fast calculation your brain does. First, you have the impulse, that totally human desire to share and connect. Then comes the pause. That's your brain slamming on the brakes, doing a super quick risk assessment. And finally, the decision, where you weigh the options and, let's be honest, you usually choose the safety of save over the vulnerability of send. A huge piece of that puzzle is this fascinating cognitive bias called the beautiful mess effect. Think about it. When you see someone else post something really personal and vulnerable, you probably think, wow, that's so brave, so authentic. But when we think about sharing that same kind of thing ourselves, oh no, our brain immediately flags it as weakness, as being too messy, or just being a burden. We admire it in other people, but we censor it in ourselves. And this quote it nails it. These files we're saving aren't just pixels on a screen. They're tied to our identity. They're like proof of who we used to be, or maybe blueprints for the person we're hoping to become. So deleting them feels like giving up, like closing a door on that possibility. We keep them because we're hesitating. Now, here's where it can get tricky. For some of us, this little habit of saving can kind of escalate. It goes beyond a neat little archive and turns into something more like digital hoarding. That's when the sheer amount of stuff you've saved starts to cause real stress, and you just feel totally overwhelmed by your own good intentions. And it turns out there are different flavors of this. See if any of these sound familiar. First, you've got your sentimental hoarder. This is all about deep emotional attachment. Deleting a file feels like you're literally erasing a part of your life story. Then there's the anxious hoarder. This is that classic just-in-case person, saving articles for a problem you'll probably never have. And finally, you've got the collector. They might be super organized, but they gather so much stuff that their files basically become a museum of unfinished business. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about the content itself. What is it about a certain video or image that makes it so powerful, that it just triggers that save instinct? I'll tell you what, it's not an accident. There's a real science to it, and it's built on some very specific trends. If you look at what's trending right now, it is all about creating this feeling of a raw, real connection. That retro revival look, it uses nostalgia to make you feel safe and cozy. That little crackle of lo-fi audio, it's designed to make a video feel more intimate, more truthful. Animated text, what they call kinetic typography, makes words feel like they're alive. And handwritten fonts add that all-important human touch. All of it is designed to bypass your logical brain and go straight for the heart, making the content feel too personal to share, but way too important to just delete. And let's just zoom in on that kinetic typography for a second. Regular text on a screen, it's just sitting there, giving you info. But when you make those words move, well, now they're telling a story. The motion can build suspense or match the rhythm of a confession. It turns a simple sentence into this powerful emotional gut punch that you just feel like you have to save. And another really powerful tool creators use, quizzes. Come on, we all love them. They tap right into that deep down desire to understand ourselves. A quiz like, what's your emotional style, changes you from someone just passively watching to an active participant. It makes you feel seen, you feel understood, and the results feel so personal that of course they're definitely worth saving. So, we've covered the why and the what. But what about the consequences? All of this invisible digital stuff has a hidden cost, an impact that we almost never ever see. It's a really fascinating question to stop and ask yourself. We think of our digital files as being weightless, right? They just live in this abstract cloud.
But what is the actual, tangible, real-world weight of all those saved videos, duplicate photos, and unread articles? Psychologically, the cost is pretty big. Our brains see every single saved file as an open loop. It's an unfinished task, an unresolved intention. And each one adds to this persistent, low-grade anxiety. You know that vague feeling of being overwhelmed all the time? Well, your 10,000 saved videos might have something to do with it. And that psychological weight has a physical counterpart that is, honestly, pretty shocking. A real environmental cost. See, the cloud isn't floating in the sky. It's made of massive, real buildings called data centers that consume enormous amounts of energy. And get this, those data centers now have a larger annual carbon footprint than the entire global aviation industry. Yeah, all the planes in the world. And to put an even finer point on it, just look at this number. 355,000 tons. That's the estimated amount of CO2 that gets pumped into the atmosphere every year just to store the duplicate photos on our phones and in the cloud. Not even all our files, just the extras. Suddenly our digital hoarding feels pretty heavy, doesn't it? So what are we supposed to do with all this? Maybe the first step isn't to feel guilty and start a massive delete fest. Maybe it's just to reframe how we see these collections. Not as a source of anxiety, but as something else entirely. What if you stopped seeing your saved folder as a graveyard of things you failed to do or say? What if you started seeing it as a diary? A raw, unfiltered record of your secret emotions, your unexpressed thoughts, and all the different versions of yourself you're still hoping to become. It really is the story of your inner life. And it's pretty funny how we write these diaries because it really depends on the generation. Gen X, they're the original digital organizers. They build these neat, perfect, hierarchical folders, curating everything. Millennials, well, they tend to create these curated archives for self-improvement, saving articles and tutorials for a future, better self. But Gen Z, they have a totally different model. I call it the big bucket. They were raised on powerful search bars, so they just save everything into one massive pile and trust that they'll be able to find it later. It's a search, don't sort philosophy. So let's end with this. I want you to really think about your own saved folder. If it truly is the unwritten story of your inner world, filled with your hopes, your fears, your unspoken feelings, what story is it telling? What does it actually say about you?